UFC 326, Oliveira versus Holloway 2. Not what everyone expected, at least out of the main event. The card was pretty good. So let's get right to the main event. Main event, Holloway versus Oliveira. I have expected Max to knock Charles out. That was my guess coming in. And if anything, other than that, Max by decision. And that's what most people have expected. On the other hand, if there was a way for Charles to win, that was actually submitting Holloway and taking him down. I didn't expect him to be that weak on takedown defense. He's used to defending against takedowns all the time because he's a boxer. So I expected him to do way better than he did. But from the moment the fight started, there was this few seconds in and a little bit of an exchange of a few punches, which Charles got better off Max at that point, and he got taken down pretty much standing up. And from that moment on, Max pretty much had no chance. The only good thing about this fight for him was that he didn't get submitted. He didn't get finished, even though a lot of times in the first round it was getting really close. It was a neck crank and it was a neck choke, which some people tapped to. We can recall Conor McGregor tapping to Khabib of a neck crank, but Max didn't, so he survived that round. Next round begins. Nobody listens to coach's advice from Max Holloway's side, and he gets taken down again and can't get up. Gets taken down again, can't get up. And the good thing about the fight, even though everyone thinks it's boring in some sense, unless you're a Charles fan or you're a really grappling fan, is that Charles was always going after submission. He wasn't staying there. It wasn't like the fight we're going to talk about with Rojas Jr., where he was just basically laying on him and that's it, getting with his legs wrapped. Charles was going for something, but Max had nothing in it. So most people were wrong on this. Max was the favorite. We expected better of him, but it's been a one-way street. As for Charles and BMF, I think it's a gimmick title, so it doesn't really matter. Does it matter? Does the title matter? It does. It doesn't really matter. And it should be used probably for the people like Masvidal and Diaz at that stage where they're out of the end of their careers, rather than the guys that are, well, not at the end of their careers, because Holloway just moved up to potentially get that revenge back against Topuria. Charles is still fighting on a high level, and he's basically top 3 contender if it's not Arman and Topuria and Gaethje. So that title is kind of meaningless and should be used for something else than top contenders. But anyway, now he won that title, so he's the BMF, and the fight was relatively boring, to say the least. And again, the only saver was that Charles was actually trying to submit Holloway. But what do you do next? Because BMF title, what do you do with Holloway? You can give him anyone from top 10, and fight. That's fine. Maybe even Paddy Pimblett would be a good suggestion. But Max is one thing, and we can leave him aside for good for now. What do we do with Charles Oliveira? Because he's not getting a title shot. He didn't finish the fight. And now I think that for sure he has a loss against Arman Sarukian. So, and Arman won all his fights that he was put against. So even though UFC doesn't like him at the moment, the only thing you can do that's fair here, if you don't give a title shot to Arman Sarukian, is you put those two together. So Charles versus Arman Sarukian, and let them fight it out, see who's actually worth the title shot. But maybe even put the interim there on the line just because they do that interim title for no good reason all the time anyway. So you put those two together, whoever wins can fight against the winner of Gaethje and Topuria, who's going to be fighting at the White House. So you do those two and you figure that out. I think that's a good setup, good for UFC if we're being somewhat fair. Other than that, yeah, there's nothing that. Next up, Caio Borralho versus Rainier Derrida. One thing with Rainier Derrida that was weird to me was that it's a big common misconception in UFC and in the fight game when a fighter looks really good before the fight, that's actually a good thing. I don't think that's the case at all. I've been doing bodybuilding 10 years ago. When you cut the weight, the leaner you are, the worse you feel. So when people say they're in good shape or it looks good and they have abs in good shape, it rarely turns out that it is actually a good thing. So typically, if the fighters make the weight, but they look on the chubbier side, they actually do perform better because they didn't have to lose that much water weight. And Derrida looked exhausted. And he said he felt great, but it didn't necessarily click with me, although I would have trusted him on his own feelings and all that. But I think when someone looks shredded completely and they're not really used to being that shredded, that is a bad sign. And that's kind of how it was, because Bararia didn't do that much, nothing interesting in that fight, just basically punch and move, hands down, and he was faster. But he was faster not because he's a very fast fighter, he was faster because Derrida is one of the slowest guys you can see at the middleweight. So in reality, he wasn't that fast. Derrida was just extremely slow. So easy bit for Bararia. I don't know who you put up against next. Just give him a higher ranked opponent. I think that would be totally fair. Rob Font versus Raul Rojas. I think Rob Font looked fine in the first round, even though he had the wide stance. He looked fine. He did well. I thought he won that first round, but the second two rounds, just all of the takedowns and everything else that Rojas has done won him the fight, but nothing impressive. So he still has to slowly climb up. Rob Font can defend the division from the incoming contenders to get to the top 15, and Rojas can slowly move up one fight or two, or one rank or two. In that regard, that's about it. Drew Dober versus Michael Johnson. Michael Johnson was super fast, attacking from the beginning, way faster than Dober, clicking in, kicking, calf kicking, doing everything right in the first round. I think he won the first round, not Dober, even though most people would disagree. Second round, he got caught and got finished. That's about it. I thought he's going to retire after this. He probably should, although he looked super fast, which is pretty impressive. So good for that. Good on this. Drew Dober can start looking to be ranked again at some point soon. And last but not least, Gregory Rodriguez versus Ferreira. Well, that's what we want to open the card with. A minute of dancing around and one punch knockout, and it's over. Robocop did what he was supposed to do. He defended his ranking, so that's exactly how it's supposed to go. Really, really impressive win for him. Good for him to get back on track and slowly move up the rankings. Now they can put him up against pretty much anyone. So in the higher rankings, just because he's either gonna get finished or he's gonna knock someone out, and he's still young, even though he doesn't look like that. So pretty impressive win for him. Well done. Event itself, I would give it 7 out of 10. I think somehow, even though there were knockouts, but there was also slow fights, I don't think the BMF title fight was that impressive either. So I leave it at 7 out of 10. That's